Starting in 5 seconds. Honorable Speaker Sir, my indirect tax proposals aim to promote exports, boost domestic manufacturing, enhance domestic value addition, encourage green energy and mobility. A simplified tax structure with fewer tax rates helps in reducing compliance burden and improving tax administration. I propose to reduce the number of basic customs duty rates on goods other than textiles and agriculture from 21 to 13. As a result, there are minor changes in the basic custom duties, cesses, and surcharges on some items, including toys, bicycle, automobiles, and naphtha. To avoid cascading of taxes on blended compressed natural gas, I propose to exempt excise duty on GST paid compressed biogas contained in it. To further provide impetus to green mobility, customs duty exemption is being extended to import the capital goods and machinery required for manufacture of lithium ion cells for batteries used in electric vehicles. As a result of various initiatives of the government, including the phased manufacturing program, mobile phone production in India has increased from 5.8 crore units valued at about rupees 18,000 crore in 2014-15 to 31 crore units valued at over rupees 3 lakh crore in the last financial year. To further deepen domestic value addition in manufacture of mobile phones, I propose to provide relief in custom duty on import of certain parts and inputs like camera lens and continue the concessional duty on lithium ion cells for batteries for another year. Similarly, to promote value addition in manufacture of televisions, I propose to reduce the basic customs duty on parts of open cells of TV panels to 2.5% to rectify inversion of duty structure and encourage manufacturing of electric kitchen chimneys. The basic customs duty on electric kitchen chimney is being increased from 7.5% to 15%, and that on heat coils for these is proposed to be reduced from 20% to 15%. Denatured ethyl alcohol is used in chemical industry. I propose to exempt basic customs duty on it. This will also support the ethanol blending program and facilitate our endeavor for energy transition. Basic customs duty is also being reduced on acid grade flour from 5% to 2.5% to make the domestic fluorochemicals industry competitive. Further, the basic customs duty on crude glycerin for manufacturing medicine is proposed to be reduced to 2.5%. In the last financial year, marine products recorded the highest export growth, benefiting farmers in the coastal states of the country. To further enhance the export competitiveness of marine products, particularly shrimps, duty is being reduced on key inputs for domestic manufacture of shrimp feed. India is a global leader in cutting and polishing of natural diamonds, contributing about three-fourths of the global turnover by value. With the depletion in deposits of natural diamonds, the industry is moving towards lab grown diamonds and it holds huge promise. To seize this opportunity, I propose to reduce basic customs duty on seeds used in their manufacture. Customs duty on bars of gold and platinum were increased earlier this fiscal. I now propose to increase the duties on articles made therefrom to enhance the duty differentially. I also propose to increase the import duty on silver bars and articles to align them with that on gold and platinum to facilitate availability of raw materials for the steel sector. Exemption from basic customs duty on raw materials for manufacture of ferrous scrap and nickel is being continued. Similarly, the concessional 2.5% on copper scrap is also being continued to ensure the availability of raw materials for secondary copper producers who are mainly in the MSME sector. The basic customs duty rate on compounded rubber is being increased from 10% to 25% or rupees 30 per kg, whichever is lower, at par with that on natural rubber other than latex to curb circumvention of duty. National calamity contingent duty on specified cigarettes was last revised 3 years ago. This is proposed to be revised upwards by about 16%. I now come to my direct tax proposals. These proposals aims to maintain continuity and stability of taxation, further simplify and rationalize various provisions to reduce the compliance burden, promotes the entrepreneurial spirit and provide tax relief to citizens. It has been the constant endeavor of the Income Tax Department to improve taxpayer services by making compliance easy and smooth. Our taxpayers portal received a maximum of 72 lakh returns in a day, processed more than 6.5 crore returns this year. Average processing period reduced from 93 days in financial year 13-14 to 16 days now, and 45% of the returns were processed within 24 hours. We intend to further improve this, roll out a next generation common IT return form for taxpayer convenience, and also plan to strengthen the grievance redressal mechanism. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Mr. Speaker, sir, for realization of the goal of housing for all and affordable housing, a tax holiday has already been provided on the profits earned by the developers of affordable housing. Also, interest paid on housing loans is allowed as a deduction to the extent of 2 lakh in respect of self-occupied property. In order to provide a further impetus, I propose to allow an additional deduction of up to rupees 1,50,000 for interest paid on loans borrowed up to 31st March 2020 for purchase of an affordable house valued up to 45 lakh. Therefore, a person purchasing an affordable house will now get an enhanced interest deduction up to 3.5 lakh. This will translate into a benefit of around 7 lakh to the middle class home buyers over their loan period of 15 years. Non-banking financial companies play an increasingly important role in the India's financial system. With the enhanced levels of regulation they are subjected to by the Reserve Bank of India, there is a need to provide greater parity in their tax treatment vis-a-vis scheduled banks. Currently, interest on certain bad or doubtful debts made by scheduled banks and other financial institutions is allowed to be offered to tax in the year in which this interest is actually received. I propose to extend this facility to deposit taking as well as systematically important non deposit taking NBFCs also. To promote the International Financial Services Center in Gift City, series of measures have already been taken in the past by this government with a view to further incentivizing the IFSC. I propose to further provide several direct tax incentives to an IFSC, including 100% profit linked deduction under Section 80LA in any 10-year block within a 15-year period, exemption from dividend distribution tax from current and accumulated income to companies and mutual funds, exemptions on capital gain to category 3, and interest payment on loan taken from non-residents. I propose to give relief in levy of securities transaction tax by restricting it only to the difference between settlement and strike price in case of exercise of options. India's ease of doing business ranking under the category of paying tax showed a significant jump. Mr. Speaker, sir, more than 120 crore Indians now have Aadhaar. Therefore, for ease and convenience of taxpayers, I propose to make PAN and Aadhaar interchangeable and allow those who don't have PAN to file income tax returns by simply quoting their Aadhaar number and also use it wherever they are required to quote PAN. Pre-filed tax returns will be made available to taxpayers, which will contain details of salary income, capital gains from securities, bank interest and dividends, etc., and tax deductions. Information regarding these incomes will be collected from the concerned sources such as banks, stock exchanges, mutual funds, EPFO, state registration departments, etc. This will not only significantly reduce the time taken to file a tax return but will also ensure accuracy of reporting of income and taxes. The existing system of scrutiny assessments in the income tax department involves a high level of personal interaction between the taxpayer and the department, which leads to certain undesirable practices on the part of tax officials. To eliminate such instances and to give shape to the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister, a scheme of faceless assessment in electronic mode involving no human interface is being launched this year in a phased manner. To start with, such assessments shall be carried out in cases requiring verification of certain specified transactions or discrepancies. Cases selected for scrutiny shall be allocated to assessment units in a random manner, and notices shall be issued electronically by a central cell without disclosing the name, designation, or location of the assessing officer. The central cell shall be the single point of contact between the taxpayer and the department. This new scheme of assessment will represent a paradigm shift in the functioning of the income tax department. Mr. Speaker, sir, our government has taken a number of initiatives in the recent past for the promotion of digital payments and a less cash economy. To promote digital payments further, I propose to take a large number of measures to discourage the practice of making business payments in cash. I propose to levy TDS of 2% on cash withdrawal exceeding 1 crore in a year from a bank account. Further, there are low cost digital modes of payments such as Bheem, UPI, UPI QR code, Aadhaar Pay, certain debit cards, NEFT, RTGS, etc., which can be used to promote less cash economy. I therefore propose that the business establishments with annual turnover more than 50 crore shall offer such low cost digital modes of payments to their customers. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Sir, let me at the outset congratulate the Finance Minister for having given us a budget which is nothing but a continuation of the past. At least he has not, in the name of wanting to do something dynamic, receded. Sir, we had hoped that the Finance Minister would not be able to produce a miracle as such, and always this excuse is given. We had 3 months. I did not have the advantage of planning commission's consultation. I did not have the advantage of states consultation, and therefore within these constraints and within that framework I had to present, and I presented the best smiling face that I could. That is understood when he said that we are trying to be true to the promises given in the manifesto by the present government. That is what I was trying to look, at least the direction in the budget. I must say that in this budget, at least apart from some words paying compliment, praise, and lip sympathy to the agricultural sector, to the rural industry, to handloom, to powerloom, to handicrafts. Let us see what are the facts. What has he proved for handloom and handicrafts? Let me take up this point just now. He has provided only rupees 34 crores, and he himself says that it will give employment at least to 25 lakh people. Now imagine the magnitude of this problem. There are a minimum of 4 crore unemployed people and 14 crore underemployed people, and you are not able to touch the fringe of this problem. I am not going to take, sir, this discussion budget as a partisan issue. I am not going to discuss it as an issue of Congress versus the present government, and I am not going to waste my time in comparing what we did and what you have done in this regard. Sir, a good thing has happened, namely a two-party system has emerged. Let us together decide in this country how we can serve the people of this country best. that is more important? If that is important, then let us see the direction. In spite of all the constraints, you have not shown a new direction, and I beg to submit that you cannot show a new direction unless some of your leaders make a complete breakaway from the present system. In spite of all that has been done in the past, the fact remains that, sir, in our country we have two economies running, namely the economy of a mini India and the economy of Maxi India, or the economy of 3 crores of people and the economy of the remaining 80 crore people. It is true that in the world today, India stands third in technological know how and expertise personnel. This being the case, practically today we are self sufficient in every basic industry. It is a good thing, but that has nothing to do with the economy of 100 crores population of our country. I had a quarrel even with the previous minister over the budget proposals. I was critical earlier also. Right in my speech in Parliament, I said that we should pursue a system which will help in the growth of the people as a whole. The fault is not with the individual, the fault is with the system, a system where capital formation takes place in the hands of a few for the benefit of the few. Such a system can never be good. Today, what is the percentage of purchasing power in the market? It is 2.1% of our population. I had once asked the planning commission to give me the figures in regard to the earnings of the various income groups. Those people who earned between rupees 500 and rupees 5000 in this country constitute 2.0%, and those people who earn more than rupees 5000 per month constitute 1.0% of our population. The total percentage of these two income groups comes to 3.0%. These are the main people who have the purchasing power in the markets. So the private sector, which controls the entire consumer goods industries, has a market for their goods. You are going to encourage them in the name of concession. You are going to encourage this corporate sector. When you say that you want to encourage the consumer goods industries, it is clear that these consumer goods industries are benefited because they are getting the profit, and the margin of profit is higher since these industries will control the purchasing power of the people. Are we going to change this picture? If you really want to change this picture, then the rural class must get the purchasing power, and there must be goods which should be produced in the rural sector so that they can buy those goods. Now, no goods could be produced in the rural areas. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. This assembly decided last year almost unanimously, I think, in favor of general widespread disarmament. The great nations of the world have committed themselves to it. The United States, through its president, recently put forward proposals which are in line with what this assembly has decided. The Soviet Russia has put forward proposals to the same effect, varying them slightly but essentially aiming at the same thing. There is a good deal of commonness about them in broad outline. If that is so, why should we not grasp this opportunity and remove the fear and terror from people's minds and devote our energies and resources to the advancement of the world? This major and outstanding question must be dealt with speedily, and the great countries, especially those which have the greatest responsibility, should address themselves again and again to the consideration of this problem together through negotiations to reach agreements. Such agreements cannot be merely agreements between some countries, however great. These must represent all the members of the United Nations, but I do think that it is better for a few countries to deal with this problem to begin with. I feel rather strongly on this question, although we in India are probably not situated in the major theaters of a possible war. Everything that man has striven for in the past thousands of years is at stake today. While I feel as strongly as possible about the freedom of the colonial countries and other dependent people, I do think that the biggest question today is the question of war and peace and disarmament. The General Assembly passed a resolution recently about nuclear tests. It was a great misfortune that after a period of abstinence from nuclear tests, there was a resumption of these tests. Immediately, it becomes more difficult to have treaties for ending nuclear tests because the whole atmosphere becomes one of fear and apprehension. I do think, and I would beg the countries concerned to realize that they are doing a grave disservice to the world, to their own countries, by not putting an end to nuclear tests by treaty as quickly as possible. The Assembly passed a resolution in favor of some kind of a moratorium. No one imagines that a voluntary moratorium is going to solve this question. There must be stricter controls by treaty and otherwise. Nuclear tests are basically evil forever. We live in a world of conflicts, and yet the world goes on undoubtedly because of the cooperation of nations and operation, and there is today a vast amount of cooperation even between countries which are opposed to each other in the political or other fields. Little is known or said about this cooperation that is going on, but a great deal is said about every point of conflict, and therefore the world is full of the idea that we live on the verge of disaster. It would perhaps be a truer picture if the cooperating elements in the world were put forward and we were made to think that the world depended on cooperation and not on conflict. A proposal has been made by many persons to the effective that more attention should be directed to the cooperative ventures, especially for peace and in the interest of peace so that more positive thinking may take place on this subject and people may realize that this cooperation is already taking place and can be extended. Some years ago, it was resolved to have an international geophysical year that was a specific subject. However, it has been suggested that perhaps this assembly might resolve to call upon all countries of the world to devote a year to the furtherance of cooperative activities in political, cultural, and the many other fields, not to mere speeches about peace that perhaps will direct some of our energy and some of our thinking to this idea of cooperation, which will create an atmosphere helpful for solving the problems more easily. That by itself will not solve any problem, but it will lessen this distrust and conflict which affect the world. I make this suggestion to you not in any detail but broadly so that this assembly might consider it and if it is worthwhile perhaps appoint a committee to consider it further and make suggestions as to how this might perhaps be done. The great men of the world have been those who have fought hatred and violence and not those who have encouraged it. We have arrived at the stage when even in some worthwhile cause hatred and violence have to be checked. This requires a new way of thinking, a new development of humanity. Possibly we are going through that process, and this very crisis will wake up the mind of man and direct it to this new way of thinking. What shall it profit the world if it conquers the material ills and then commits suicide because it has not controlled its own mind? Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. The Rajasthan State Road Transport Corporation has filed the above appeal aggrieved by the judgment of the Rajasthan High Court of Judicature Jaipur bench by which regulation 4(3) of the Rajasthan State Road Transport Corporation Compassionate Appointment Regulations 2010 has been declared as violative of Article 14 of the Constitution of India. The respondent's father, Mohammad Shahid, who was working as a helper in the appellant corporation, died in a motor accident. He was traveling in a bus of the appellant corporation which collided with another bus. A claim was made by the respondent before the Motor Accident Claim Tribunal Tonk under Section 166 and of the Motor Vehicles Act 1988. An amount of rupees 135 lakhs was claimed, but the tribunal awarded a compensation of rupees 22 lakhs. The respondent made a representation to the chief manager of the appellant corporation seeking compassionate appointment. The request for compassionate appointment was rejected on the ground that the respondent was not entitled in light of Regulation 4(3) of the regulations. Dissatisfied with the rejection of the request for compassionate appointment, the respondent filed a writ petition in the High Court challenging the constitutionality of Regulation 4(3). The High Court allowed the writ petition by a judgment on the ground that Regulation 4 under bracket 3 of the regulations is discriminatory and violative of Article 14 of the Constitution. The High Court held that the object of compassionate appointment is to mitigate the hardship of the family members of the breadwinner, and for that reason, compassionate appointment should be provided to the family in distress. According to Regulation 4(3) of the regulations, claim for both compassionate appointment and compensation under the Act cannot be made against the corporation in case of death of an employee while traveling in the vehicle of the appellant corporation. Regulation 4(3) was found to be discriminatory because compassionate appointment can be provided to an employee who dies in an accident while traveling in a vehicle not belonging to the corporation, though he had claimed compensation either from the owner of the vehicle or the insurance company under the Act. Before proceeding further, it is relevant to take note of Regulation 4(3) of the regulations, which allows computation on account of injury or death to the person while performing official duty. This is the case for that period. On the occasion of death of an employee of the corporation while performing his duty, or a vehicular death by the vehicle belonging to the corporation, if the legal representatives of the deceased employee seeks compensation from the corporation by filing a claim petition before the accident tribunal and the same is awarded or the matter remains pending before the tribunal, in such a case the legal representatives of the deceased employee shall have no right to seek appointment on compassionate ground if compensation is awarded or the matter remains pending before the tribunal. If on the death of an employee of the corporation, his legal representative at the time of compassionate appointment files an application for the same in the prescribed format, then the application for appointment on compassionate ground has to be supplemented with an affidavit on a non-judicial stamp paper of ₹10 by the legal representative that no claim petition against the corporation has been filed before any competent court, and also that no such claim shall be filed in the future, and if in future, even if any of the legal representatives files a claim petition before MACT, then the employer shall have right to cancel my appointment without any notice, and that I won't file any case against such dismissal before any competent court. According to the said regulation, the death of an employee of the corporation while traveling in a vehicle belonging to the appellant corporation cannot give rise to compensation under the Act, as well as a claim for compassionate appointment in the appellant corporation. The question that arises for our consideration is whether the High Court was right in holding that regulation for bracket 3 is discriminatory and violative of Article 14 of the Constitution. The reason given by the High Court to hold it unconstitutional is that whereas the dependents of the employee would die in an accident while on a vehicle owned by the appellant corporation are not entitled for compassionate appointment after claiming compensation under act, the dependent of an employee who died in an accident while traveling in a vehicle not owned by the appellant corporation are entitled to get compensation under the act against the owner of the vehicle or the insurance company as the case may be, as well as a right to claim compassionate appointment. The High Court was of the opinion that the dependents of employees of the corporation who died due to an accident while traveling in a vehicle of the corporation cannot be treated differently from dependents of employees who died in an accident while traveling in a corporation vehicle. Stop. Starting in 5 seconds. Making the above submissions, it is prayed to allow the present appeal and direct the respondents to appropriate the payment of rupees 1.25 crore towards settlement dues under the scheme 2019 and that discharge certificate be issued to the appellant accordingly. While opposing the present appeal, learned ASG, appearing on behalf of the Union of India, has vehemently submitted that in the facts and circumstances of the case, no error has been committed by the Honorable High Court in dismissing the writ petition and refusing to direct the respondents to accept the payment towards the settlement dues under the scheme 2019. It is submitted that admittedly the scheme was valid up to 30th June 2020 and the last date for the payment of settlement amount under the scheme 2019 was 30 June 2020. That thereafter the scheme was closed and even the designated committee were also dissolved and therefore, as rightly observed by the Honorable High Court, the Honorable High Court has no jurisdiction to extend the scheme. It is submitted that if the scheme is extended, it would create many complications. It is further submitted that in the present case, admittedly, no payment was made of settlement amount under the scheme prior to 30 June 2020 and therefore the prayer of the original petitioner to extend the time limit to make the payment of settlement amount under the scheme 2019 was rightly rejected by the commissioner and the same has rightly not been interfered with by the Honorable High Court. Making above submissions, it is prayed to dismiss the present appeal. We have heard the learned counsel appearing for the respective parties at length. At the outset, it is required to be noted, and it is not in dispute, that the appellant is entitled to the benefit of the settlement under the scheme 2019. The scheme 2019 came to be introduced on 1st September 2019, and the last date for making the application under the scheme was 30th December 2019, and in fact the appellant submitted the application in form number 1 on before the last date specified for making an application under the scheme. After the form number 1 is processed, the designated committee was to scrutinize the same and issue the final form number 3 determining the settlement. The final determination, form number 3, that the appellant was issued the form number 3 on 25th February 2020 and was required to pay the settlement dues on or before 25th March 2020. However, in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, the government extended the time up to 30th June 2020. Therefore, the appellant was required to deposit the settlement dues on or before 30 June 2020. However, even before the scheme 2019 came to be introduced, the appellant was subjected to proceedings under the IBC, which commenced when the NCLT admitted the application under Section 7 of the IBC. Thus, the moratorium under the IBC commenced on 11 September 2018. The COC approved the resolution plan on 4th June 2019, and the same came to be approved by the NCLT by order. Therefore, the moratorium under the IBC continued up to 24th July 2020. Under the provisions of the IBC, no payment could have been made during the period of moratorium. Therefore, the appellant was statutorily restrained from making any payment. There was statutory disability on the part of the appellant in making the payment during the moratorium. If the appellant had made any payment during the period of moratorium, the appellant would have committed breach of the provisions of the IBC. Therefore, it was possible for the appellant to make any payment during the period of moratorium. Immediately on the moratorium coming to an end, the appellant approached the authority requesting them to accept the settlement amount under the scheme 2019 as per the form number 3. Such request has been rejected by the Commissioner. On the rejection has been confirmed by the High Court. Therefore, the sought question which is posed for consideration before this court is whether, when it was impossible for the appellant to deposit the settlement amount in view of the bar and the restrictions under the IBC, the appellant can be punished for no fault of the appellant. In a given case, can the applicant be made to suffer for no fault of its own and be rendered remediless and denied the benefit, though it was impossible for the appellant to carry out certain acts, namely to deposit the settlement amount during the moratorium. As per the settled position of law, no party shall be left remediless, and whatever the grievance the parties had raised before the court of law has to be examined on its own merits. As observed and held by this court, no law would compel a person to do the impossible. Stop.